السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. I am assistant lecturer Lamia Hadi. Our lab today I will talk about the practical of the cardiovascular system. The first slide, sagittal sections in the cheek embryo. And these sections show the brain vesicles, a telencephalon forming the lateral ventricle, a diencephalon forming the third ventricle. From the diencephalon you can see this is the infundibulum forming the posteriorly of the pituitary gland, or is called the neurohypophysis, while the outpocket from the oral cavity is called the Radke's pouch of later forming the interiorly of the pituitary gland, the adenohypophysis. And next, this is the midbrain forming the cerebral aqueduct, and the neural regions is called the isthmus or rhombencephalic isthmus. Rhombencephalic isthmus, demarcations between the posteriorly the metencephalon and the interiorly the midbrain. And this is the metencephalon. Metencephalon forming interiorly the pons, posteriorly forming a cerebellum. And this arch is called the neuromeres of the myelencephalon. Neuromeres from the myelencephalon. The cavity from the third from the metencephalon and the myelencephalon is called the fourth ventricle. Also in these sections you can see the part of the notochord, and this is the dorsal aorta. Dorsally you can see this is the neural tube. Ventral to it, notochord. Ventral to the notochord, the dorsal aorta. Ventricle dorsal aorta, gut tube. This is the gut tube. You can see this is the stomodium, and this is the tissue block of the pharyngeal arch. And ventral to the gut tube, the heart. This is the many parts of the heart. The heart tube consists of the fourth part forming interiorly and posteriorly the pulpus, corridus, ventricle, atrium, and the sinus venosus, and cannot clearly any part of the sections. You can see many parts of the heart loop. Fourth, bulbus, corridus, ventricle, and atrium with sinus venosus, all forming the heart loop. And next, show the plastic sections of the cheek embryo about 50 hours. And these sections show the brain vesicles, a telencephalon forming the lateral ventricle, a diencephalon forming the third ventricle, a midbrain forming the cerebral aqueduct, and this is the rhombencephalic isthmus and metencephalon and myelencephalon. This is the neuromeres of the myelencephalon. The cavity from the metencephalon and الميلين سيفيلون fourth ventricle. Also you can see this is the optic cup with lens vesicles from the diencephalon. Optic cup with lens vesicles from the diencephalon, while you can see ear vesicles or aortic vesicles or otocyst from the myelencephalon. Also you can see this project ectodermal outpocket of the Rathke's pouch from the stomodium. This is the stomodial or oral cavity. Rathke's pouch later connecting with the oral cavity, forming the anteriorly pituitary gland, or adenohypophysis. Okay, this is Rathke's pouch, stomodial. Also in these sections you can see a pharyngeal arch with pharyngeal pouch. The pharyngeal arch in each of the pharyngeal arch has its ion artery and the cranial nerve. These arteries, red colors, is called aortic arch, that originate from the root of the aorta. This is the ventral aorta. Okay, ventral aorta. Aortic arch originates from the root of the aorta and will end into the dorsal aorta. You can see a dorsal aorta. Again, ventral aorta, aortic arch, and the dorsal aorta, root of the aortic arch. This is the dorsal aorta, and this is the pharyngeal pouch with pharyngeal arch pouch. Also in these sections show heart loop. The heart tube has 4 parts from anteriorly to posteriorly: bulbus corridus, ventricle, atrium, and the sinus venosus. These 4 parts bend, forming the heart loop. This is the heart loop. In these sections show atrium. This is the atrium. Ventricle and sinus venosus. This is the sinus venosus. البلبس corridus not found in these sections. Okay. Atrium, ventricle, and the sinus venosus. The sinus venosus consists of the transverse parts and left and right sinus horns. Each horns has 3 trabecules. Vitelline vein, this is the vitelline vein, and umbilical vein not found in these sections, and the common cardinal vein. The common cardinal vein large the terminal branched, divided into anteriorly and posteriorly. Anteriorly, here in these sections, is called the anteriorly cardinal vein, while posteriorly not found in these sections. Okay, cardinal vein divided anteriorly is called the anteriorly cardinal vein, with posteriorly cardinal vein not found in these sections. Sinus venosus, vitelline vein, and cardinal vein. Also, in this section show the dorsal aorta. The dorsal aorta derived from the bilateral angiogenetic cells clusters caudally to the formations the heart tube. Bilateral dorsal aorta located in the anteriorly separated by the head mesenchyma. You can see bilateral dorsal aorta and anteriorly separated by the head mesenchyma, while bilateral dorsal aorta caudally effused, forming a single dorsal aorta. With single dorsal aorta will forming the descending thoracic and descending abdominal aorta, where these aorta give many intersegmental arterial branches to each embryonic segmental. And this is the vitelline artery. Also in these sections you can see yellow colors in neural tube, with central the notochord, neural tube, notochord, notochord. Again, telencephalon, diencephalon, the optic cup with lens vesicles, midbrain, isthmus, rhombencephalic isthmus, metencephalon, myelencephalon, aortic vesicles. This is the pharyngeal arch with pouch, aortic arch, ventral aorta, dorsal aorta, and this is the heart loop, atrium, ventricle, sinus venosus, الcardinal vein, الanteriorly cardinal vein, الvitelline vein, الvitelline artery, bilateral dorsal aorta, neural tube, notochord. Next, the also plastic sections of the chick embryo about 72 hours. In these sections also you can see the brain vesicles, telencephalon, cavity, lateral, ventricle, diencephalon, forming the third ventricle, midbrain, forming the cerebral aqueduct, and this is the rhombencephalic isthmus, metencephalon, and the myelencephalon, forming the fourth ventricle from the metencephalon and the myelencephalon. Also in these sections you can see the optic cup with a lens vesicles, optic cup with a lens vesicles. Also you can see the pharyngeal arch, and this is the pharyngeal arch with a pouch. Each pharyngeal arch has an artery and a cardinal vein. This artery, red colors, is called an aortic arch. The aortic arch originated from the root of the aorta and will end into the dorsal aorta. The aortic arch and the dorsal aorta and this is the heart loop. The heart tubes has 4 parts from anteriorly to posteriorly. The bulbus, corridus, atrium, ventricle, and sinus venosus. Again, bulbus corridus, atrium, ventricle, sinus venosus. These 4 parts bend forming to the heart loop. then هذا هسه هنا الهارت لوب. The sinus venosus. Each horns of the sinus venosus has 3 trabeculae. The common cardinal vein, large, the terminal branched, divided into anteriorly, forming the anteriorly cardinal vein. And posteriorly is called posteriorly cardinal vein. Common cardinal vein, anteriorly cardinal vein, posteriorly cardinal vein. The second trabeculae of the sinus venosus, the vitelline vein. Vitelline vein, that the bilateral vitelline vein, forming the enstomosing venous plexus around the duodenum and the septum transverse. The plexus around the duodenum forming the portal vein, the plexus in the septum transverse forming a sinusoid of the liver. Left vitelline vein disappear, while right vitelline vein is enlarged to form the right hepatocardiac canals, that later forming the hepatic part of the inferior vena cava. Okay, this is the vitelline vein. A third, it arises from the sinus venosus, the umbilical vein, that the bilateral right under left umbilical vein lying on the side of the liver, just lateral vitelline vein. As the liver grows, these veins become connecting with a sinusoid of the liver. You can see this is the umbilical vein located in the elentus. This is the elentus, and this is the umbilical vein, lateral vitelline vein. Again, sinus venosus, common cardinal vein, divided anteriorly cardinal vein, posteriorly cardinal vein, and from the sinus venosus, vitelline vein and umbilical vein. And this is the dorsal aorta. You can see dorsal aorta, anteriorly bilateral dorsal aorta, while in the caudally fused bilateral forming to the single dorsal aorta. You can see this is the common iliac artery in the trunk, derivative from the dorsal aorta. This is the common iliac artery in the trunk, derivative from the dorsal aorta, a large terminal branching, arise the umbilical artery. You can see this is the umbilical artery. Umbilical artery connecting the dorsal aorta with the placenta, and those carry nutrients and excrete waste products. Telencephalon, diencephalon, optic cup, midbrain, rhombencephalic isthmus, telencephalon, diencephalon, pharyngeal arch, aortic arch, pharyngeal arch with pouch, and this is the heart loop, bulbus corridus, atrium, ventricle, sinus venosus. From sinus venosus, the common cardinal vein divided anteriorly cardinal vein, posteriorly cardinal vein. This is the umbilical vein, and this is the vitelline vein. Dorsal aorta, common iliac artery, and this is the umbilical artery, and these the vitelline artery. Vitelline artery a branch from the ventral aspect of the single dorsal aorta, supplying the iliac sac. These arteries then will supply derivative of the gut tube. Vitelline vein, vitelline artery. Umbilical vein, umbilical artery. Posterior cardinal vein, anterior cardinal vein. Common cardinal vein, sinus venosus. Atrium, bulbus corridus, and ventricle. Thank you.